Hello, welcome to Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is we're going to take a step away from the matrices that we've done the last couple chapters. Trust me, we'll get back to those in Chapter 6 in a huge way. But in Chapter 5, we're going to talk about different types of strategies. Because it's a strategy class, we got to figure out what the different options are in terms of strategies. So I'm going to go through the list. You have a list on page... if you're in the 13th edition on page 137, it goes through them all. I'm going to talk about them a little bit, explain them a little bit, and then let you do the exercises on your own. Okay, first strategy we're going to talk about is forward integration. This is when a company is going to buy out its distributors to eliminate another step in the process, in a sense, get more profit. So for example, if you sell automobiles, and if you manufacture automobiles, the dealerships buy the automobiles from you and then resell them. Well, if the manufacturer had its own auto dealerships, then the profit that the dealer would be making now goes to the manufacturer. So there's a lot to be said for that, and some car companies do this. The problem is that it's a tremendous financial investment and you're getting into a completely different business. If you manufacture Blu-ray players, and now you want to get into selling Blu-ray players, in a sense you're getting into the electronics distribution and sales market when all you've really done is manufacture. So that's a difficult transition to make, but it can be extremely profitable. Next, horizontal integration. This is when you buy out your competitors. When you say, all right, these guys are competing with us, let's see if we can buy them out. And this has been really popular recently in the world of cyberspace, in the online market, where you get major companies, these online companies just buying each other out. Whether it's Google or Microsoft or whoever, as soon as somebody looks to be a threat, they buy them out. In terms of McDonald's, it'd be as if McDonald's were to buy out Burger King. And there could be some value in that. There's actually reasons why they wouldn't do that, which is probably, this isn't the time to discuss that, but it's quite common. Oil companies are another one, gas stations. Those of you that are a little older, meaning maybe over, like me, over 35, you remember the days a long time ago when you would pull up to a corner and there'd be 4 different types of service station, gas station. You'd have 2 big ones, maybe a Mobil and a Shell, and then you'd have a couple smaller independents. And those independents often would have lower prices because it's the only way they could compete, and they would just live on a smaller margin. Well, now all those independents are gone. They've been bought up by the big guys because they were a threat. Okay, next, backward integration. This is when you buy your suppliers. A popular example of this is Ford. Henry Ford decided that he was not going to pay these inflated rates for all of the supplies to manufacture his cars. He thought he could make his cars much cheaper if he owned the steel mill, the coal manufacturer, or the coal company, the rubber company for the tires. If he owned it all, he could take all that margin for himself and then keep his price lower and thereby keep his competition out. The other thing he could do is if he owned all the rubber companies, none of the other car companies could get rubber unless they went to him. So there is a real strength added to his company by doing this backward integration. Okay, market penetration. This is increased sales through marketing. So if you have a product like Ford or say Krispy Kreme, you can increase your sales by doing a major marketing push or a major change in marketing to try and bring in new customers. Market development. This is the introduction of products to new markets. So for Ford, maybe they go to a continent they aren't currently on, which at this point might only be Antarctica, but or they go to a country they're not currently in. Maybe they're targeting China, maybe they're targeting a third world country, which Ford has been known to do with their less expensive cars, and that's been their business model for over 100 years. Or Krispy Kreme's going into more rural areas. They tend to be in large cities right now. There's a lot of cities of 30 to 60,000 people that would love a Krispy Kreme. So they may introduce their products to new markets. Product development. Increase sales through improved products. Here you're looking at something where if you improve your product, you can stimulate a sales bump. And sometimes you need to put yourself back in the game, put yourself back on people's minds. I think of new and improved Tide. That was a big deal about, 15 years ago, when Tide had been the same as a laundry detergent forever. And they were getting beat by all these new companies. Well, these that were producing new products, new laundry detergents. These new products weren't necessarily better, but they were newer, and a lot of times people assume newer is better. So what Tide did is they stuck a big sticker across the front that said new and improved. Was it new? Was it improved? I'm not sure. How it was improved? I'm not sure. But it got them back in the game. People started buying Tide again. Oh, I remember Tide. And then they use it, and it's good. And so they would stick with it. You see this especially with old companies that have had household products that have been great and been around forever. Windex. It worked fine 30 years ago. But they keep having to stick stickers on it saying new and improved, updated formula. Personally, I'm fine with the old one. It worked just fine, but they like to do this so get back in people's minds. So the new fancy product, I think of the one my wife brought home, says Kaboom. That Kaboom doesn't take all their business because it's a cool name and it's got good colors and it looks like it's going to do a lot, and it's got a name that says it's going to, create an explosion of cleanliness. And Windex, just what does Windex even mean? And so it doesn't, Kaboom looks a lot more exciting, even though Windex is probably still better. And so they stick some stickers on it and say, oh, well, Windex worked good before. Now that they're new and improved, I may go with them instead of the Kaboom. That's the reason they do things like that. All right. Related diversification. Increase sales through new products. This is, but related diversification. Krispy Kreme, this would be a good example. We talked in chapter 4 about coffee, about how they have bad coffee, and I apologize if you like Krispy Kreme coffee. But if they had, if they did introduce coffee, people may come in to better coffee. People may come in to buy the new coffee, but when they're there, they're also going to buy donuts. And so the increased sales through new products not only increases the sales because of the new products, but it brings people to your location, especially for storage. Auto dealers are famous for this. You introduce an exciting new car. Dodge did this with the Viper. The Viper is out of the price range for almost everybody. But you want to see it. Car people want to see this in person. So you go to the lot to look at the Viper. Maybe they even let you test drive it. But you can't afford it. But you're on the lot, and that gives the salesman the chance to hit you for buying one of their other cars. And it worked. And it worked great. Because people say, why do they make the Viper? They lose money on the Viper. They don't sell enough. But the company did better when they released it because people are going to the lots. All right, next, unrelated diversification. Increase sales through unrelated products. This is always a little bit dangerous. This is when you're going outside your comfort zone. We talked about this in one of the previous lectures where we have a situation where a company makes something that is not their game. So you would have Krispy Kreme now making French fries. Or even worse, Krispy Kreme making laptops. A little bit sketchy in terms of if that's a good idea. It is a type of strategy. It's typically not recommended that you go outside of your area of expertise and start making things that aren't yours. We've had some discussion on the Disney case, and one of the things you'll see what we saw with Disney was that Disney tends to do things that are outside their realm, and it has gotten them in trouble at times. When they stick to family entertainment, they tend to do very well. When they go into other areas, they've struggled at times. You also see this with the big Japanese companies like a Yamaha or a Mitsubishi. They tend to struggle for quite a while when they get into these new areas. So that's not necessarily recommended, but it's important to talk about it. Next, retrenchment. This is when you are in big trouble. This is when you start selling stuff. You start selling your assets. That's always a little bit frightening. You sell your assets and you reduce costs. So retrenchment is when you do all the firing, You maybe eliminate unproductive product lines. Companies that do this, we're all familiar with, are the television networks. They're retrenching all the time. Their costs get very bloated very quickly, and then they end up cutting TV shows that maybe you like. They end up firing actors that are highly paid. They bring their costs down. They cut expensive things and streamline. Because something that they realize time and time again is that their income doesn't change that much if their ratings just take a small drop. But they can reduce their costs dramatically by cutting very expensive TV shows that, of course, we all love and get very upset when they cancel. Next, divestiture. Divestiture, selling part of the company. So if you have a part of the company that maybe is doing very well and you need to sell it because it's very valuable and you need that money to keep going, or you sell part of the company that's doing very poorly and it's costing you money, someone else thinks they can do better with it. So you'll hear this term a lot, and it simply means you're just selling off a chunk of your company. Liquidation. This is when you're selling everything. Typically you liquidate when you're going out of business, if you're selling everything. We always see the sign in front of the furniture store, liquidation sale. It means they're going out of business, and they want to sell off their inventory to try and scrounge that last little bit of money out of the business. It's also kind of sometimes it can be deceptive. You'll see a liquidation sale for a furniture store, and the sign's up there for like 6 years, and they're always liquidating, they're always going out of business, because people think that if somebody's liquidating, they're going to get great prices. I had an experience once of going into a store that legitimately was liquidating. It was a mom and pop appliance and furniture store. It was in a smaller town, and their lease was they had let their lease expire. They were going out of business. They had about 3 more days, and I went into the store, and they had furniture and appliances and TVs and everything still in there, and they had marked them down about 10%. Still more expensive than if I went to Walmart. And I said, what happens to all this stuff? If I asked the owner this, what happens to all this stuff if you don't sell it in the next 3 days? He's like, well, it's still mine. I still have it. And I said, why don't you lower the prices so that people will actually buy it? And he said, but then I'll lose money on it. Kind of showed me why he was going out of business in the first place. Because getting $500 for a TV he paid $700 for means he has $500 in his pocket and no TV. Where if he will only accept $750 so he makes a profit, he's not going to get the $750, and now he's got to pay to store the TV. And he has no money in his pocket. So he didn't really understand that, and I tried to explain it to him, of course, with the intent being that I'd get a good deal on something, and he just wouldn't go for it. And I remember going back the last day, a few days later, and he only had about a half hour left in the day, and he had all this stuff still there, and I made him an offer on everything in the store, because I thought I could resell it. If I lowballed him, he was desperate, I could resell it on Craigslist at a low price. And he said he would not accept $1 less than what he paid for everything. And it was very interesting and a little bit sad, to be honest. So liquidation is the last one. That is it for chapter 5. Chapter 6 is a big one. We've got a lot of matrices to go through on chapter 6. And so enjoy your week, and we'll see you next week.